Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to News Toast, and for the third time in a week, I'm actually able to give you all great news for the console industry and its pricing. Yeah, I know, this has been a massive talking point for the past 12 months, but last week we got great news for the PlayStation 5, then later in the week we got great news for the Switch 2, and now today we got fantastic news for Xbox and seemingly the next generation Xbox as well. So stick around, we're going to get into all of that later on in the video, and then also a major game, maybe even possibly two, will potentially get their grand reveals at the upcoming PlayStation State of Play. First, though, I do want to thank my supporters on Patreon and on YouTube memberships. Thank you just so much for what you do, and you will receive this video through early access. Let's go and get right into things, though, starting off with Mario Fever Tennis. It will be out here in just a few days on February 12th, but reviews are currently rolling out, and right now it sits at a 77 overall score on Metacritic with a total of 70 reviews. And outside of Mario Tennis 64, this is really right in line with where these games tend to fall. In fact, it's a bit higher than the last big entry being Mario Tennis Aces, which received a 75. Now, as for the context, though, from what I gathered, Mario Fever Tennis is really a fun game when you play its multiplayer specifically, whether that be online or through couch co-op. Now, it also has a lot of fun new mechanics, such as its new racket system, but the single player is where it falls short yet again. So the way I view this is that if you like Mario Tennis games and, if you like to play these games for their multiplayer, then this could be a good fun game to get. But just don't necessarily go in with the expectation that it's going to have a robust single-player mode as well. And I get why some people might be disappointed about that, just considering, Nintendo is charging $70, which I think is kind of crazy for this type of game. Nintendo really has been, in my opinion, very greedy this generation, and this here is point in case. I just feel like this game could have benefited from a more budget-friendly option, but no, Nintendo was charging their full AAA price, and I'll be very interested to see how fans take that here in the coming months. If anything else, though, with higher prices comes higher expectations, which definitely can play a part into the reviews. Oh, and only 24 hours after I said that I hope Sega will remake Yakuza 4, 5, and 6, well, they shut me down real quick. Today, they announced that Yakuza Kiwami 3 will be the last Kiwami title. Their exact words was that I don't think it will continue as the Kiwami series anymore. I think a different series will begin, and not something like a Dragon 9, but rather a new series on a different line with a different meaning. This might be something you'll understand once you play Yakuza Kiwami 3. Now, I have not played Kiwami 3 just yet, so I have no idea what he's referring to, but I will say this much. We have a ton of Yakuza games, both mainline and spin-offs. There's also the Judgment series, which is equally as good, and that's my thing. For the most part, these have been excellent games, and I feel like RGG has more than earned the right to be more creative with a different line of games, as they said here. Now, I assume whatever they're going to do will likely be tied into the same universe, similar to how Judgment is connected to the Yakuza line, but either way, for now, it seems like they're done with the Kiwami remakes. Oh, and speaking of remakes, it sounds like Rayman fans will soon have something to look forward to, and that's kind of the thing. Rayman fans really haven't had much to look forward to in a very, very long time, to say the least. However, series creator Michel Ancel, during an interview in a Retro Gamer article, seemingly announced a Rayman 1 remaster. And admittedly, it was kind of strange to see him talk so openly about it, but from his wordage, it did sound like it's not going to be a remake, but rather it's going to be a remaster. He mentioned that they're doing things like adding some checkpoints to make it just a little bit less frustrating. So with that, I wouldn't necessarily go into the official announcement with the expectation that it's going to be a full-blown remake. But with that said, there has been some speculation that its official announcement could be imminent. Ubisoft has already launched its 30th anniversary campaign, and hey, there is a very long event planned for just later this week. So who knows, maybe it'll show up as a part of the PlayStation State of Play. Now, I'm not saying that it's going to be there, but you never know. All right, now let's just go and talk about the potentially great news that Xbox and their fans just received, and This will actually complete the trifecta between Nintendo, PlayStation, and now Xbox. Of course, I'm talking about the price of their consoles. Really, the last 12 months has been nothing but chaos for the console industry, just in terms of pricing, especially with the AI boom. But last week, Sony confirmed that they secured enough RAM to last them for at least 2026. It also sounds like Nintendo did the exact same thing, and that more or less tells us that more than likely, both of them are going to be able to sit tight at their current price tags, despite the fact that the AI boom has caused RAM to skyrocket in price. So at the time, Xbox was the only one of the big three that we didn't know about. Did they prepare ahead of time as well? And honestly, we still don't know the answer to that question. However, they received good news in a different way. And I'll just read it here. This comes from Jez Corden, and he wrote, Microsoft might be getting United States tariff exemptions on chips supplied by TSMC, potentially dramatically lowering cost. Citing sources familiar with the matter, albeit unauthorized to speak officially, Financial Times says that the United States administration is allowing TSMC to provide exemptions to specific companies from an updated tariff regime. The White House is trying to incentivize TSMC and other chip makers to invest in United States manufacturing instead, to which Taiwan-based TSMC has pledged $165 billion in future investments. The tariff carve-outs would reportedly be tied to how Taiwan allocates investments in building out U.S.-based chip manufacturing operations, although the source says the plans are still in flux. So this is not 100% definitive just yet, but as Jez Corden pointed out, if this does indeed go through, then the Xbox brand should be heavily impacted. The Xbox Ally, which has an AMD chip, is largely fabricated by TSMC, and the next generation Xbox, which is also using an AMD chip, is likely again produced by TSMC as well. So what this means is that if Microsoft can get an exemption, well, that could benefit not only them, but consumers as well. Both the price for the Xbox Ally and their next generation console could come in at a cheaper price. And right now, anything helps with the rising cost of things like RAM and even storage. Now, I will say that I'm still interested in the RAM situation, though, not only for this generation, but for next generation as well. Right now, it sounds like 2027 is on the table for the next generation Xbox, but if RAM prices have not gone down by that point, how is that situation going to impact their plans? Because if it affects price too much, would Xbox be willing to delay it, similar to what we've heard about the PlayStation 6? Now, I've said before, I'm not convinced that Microsoft is as concerned about price, just because I think they're targeting a more premium option like we've never really seen before from one of the main three console makers. Plus, they also have these OEM partnerships which can target different price tags, and that wouldn't be limited to just one single year. Technically, Xbox could launch their console in 2027, and then ROG, they could launch another Xbox console in 2028 or 2029, and it could come in at an even cheaper price. So I don't think that Xbox is quite as handcuffed as PlayStation, because they will have other options. It's not just a traditional console, but nonetheless, this news is still good news for price and for consumers, and that's always very, very welcome. All right, now one more thing before we go, though, because we are hearing about a couple big games that could potentially be at the upcoming PlayStation State of Play. Now, unfortunately, I'm going to have to douse the fire for this first rumor, or at least somewhat, and that's for Devil May Cry 6. Now, I would love for this one to be true, but what's happening here is that a rumor popped up that a 6th entry will be announced at the State of Play. And this blew up online, especially after a Devil May Cry 5 voice actor responded to that rumor with the big eyeball emoji. So immediately people took that as a tease that yes, it's going to happen, and it just kind of spread like wildfire after that. However, he later on responded to Genki, who retweeted him, and he said, "Trust me, if I knew anything, I'd say it. Just out here getting excited about rumors and tweets." So he's more or less attempting to say that he knows nothing, which, I mean, maybe he does, maybe he doesn't, but here he is saying he knows nothing and, not to use him as a reason to believe this rumor. Now, again, that's not to say that this rumor won't turn out to be true, but I do think it's important to keep in mind that it's definitely not a foregone conclusion like some people originally thought when they first saw his emoji tweet. Now, as for the other rumor, though, I think this one is actually a lot more likely, and that is a re-reveal for Marvel Tocom. Now, this is a PlayStation published game in partnership with Arc System Works, and we know for a fact that it is planned for 2026. So it would make a lot of sense for Sony to talk about it probably, sooner rather than later, but even more so is that its Steam page was briefly updated and then archived by somebody on Resetera before it was taken offline. And well, apparently its page revealed that it will have 20 characters at launch, a single-player mode, and also 64-player lobbies. Unfortunately, though, the PC version seemingly will require a PSN account, which, depending on your location, could be a problem. We saw that happen with Helldivers 2 as well. There was a big controversy over that when it first launched, but whatever the case may be, the timing of all of this definitely seems to point to an imminent announcement, which will more than likely be the upcoming State of Play. I mean, maybe they could reveal some gameplay and, maybe a release date and even possibly a beta. Regardless, though, I think the single game already makes the State of Play just that much more interesting if you like fighting style of games. And hey, with it being a 60-plus minute long event, this theoretically should only be one of the many, many games that they're going to reveal. Anyways, though, that's going to be it for this episode. But until next time, make sure to subscribe, ring that bell, and peace out.